Hey guys, it's Dobrev Communications, and welcome to my review of Let's Be Cops, 2014 comedy. And this is a movie that was made on a $17 million budget and was a pretty good hit. It made $126.9 million. So it's actually a pretty sizable hit. It's written by Luke Greenfield. It also was produced by Luke Greenfield as well as Simon Kinberg. It's written by Luke Greenfield and Nicholas Thomas. It stars Jake Johnson, Damon Wayans Jr., Nina Dobrev, Rob Riggle, Keegan-Michael Key from Key and Peele, as well as James D'Arcy and Andy Garcia. Now, this is a film that was not very well received when it came out. It has an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this is a movie that when I saw the trailer, it really didn't look like much, and it was definitely not a movie I was going to see in the theater, and I'm actually pretty surprised it made as much money as it did. But after watching it, it was a time waster for me. At the end of the day, it's one of those movies that's just simply mediocre. It's not really bad. It's not really good either. It's just one of those movies that's just there. It's entertaining for the one time that you watch it, but other than that, it really doesn't have a lot of. It doesn't have really a lot that holds it up for further viewings. It doesn't really have a lot of rewatchability factor. So that's why it's pretty much a mediocre film. And these are the type of reviews that are the hardest for me to do because it's really kind of hard. It's really kind of hard to really get into reviewing a movie that's just there. But anyway, it's definitely better than I thought it was going to be because I thought it was going to be one of the worst of the year. But I gave it a look and it turned out to just be mediocre. But, hey, something that happens. But there are some things I actually like about it. There's also things I don't like about it, which is why it's mediocre. First off, I like the cast. I do like Jake Johnson. I like the little bit that he had as a principal in 21 Jump Street. So it was nice to see him in this role. Damon Wayans Jr. I had fun with. I thought that these two are what carried the film. I thought they had good chemistry between each other, unlike some critics believe they didn't have any. I disagree with that. I think they had really good chemistry with one another. And the film also had a good, nice heart to it, which goes a long way for me. But as an action comedy, there's really none of the action sequences are really that memorable. They're pretty tame, and don't really do much different. But there are some things about the script also that I like. The little thing where Damon Wayans Jr.'s love interest, played by Nina Dobrev, who's really gorgeous. She's a gorgeous woman, as Josie. She's works as a waitress, but she has this desire to become a makeup effects artist. So she wants to go to school to become a makeup effects artist, a special effects makeup artist. And her apartment has all these old school movie posters on the walls, like of David Cronenberg's The Fly and Alien. So I thought that was a nice little touch that the film had. I thought the villain was intimidating, played by James D'Arcy, plays this Albanian mobster, mafioso, pretty much, Mossy Kasich. I thought he was good. Andy Garcia was good in a little bit that he had as a DEA agent. The head of the DEA was actually, of course, he's in on it. He's with the bad guys. He's the real bad guy. But I thought he did a good job too for the little bit sequences that he was in. Rob Riggle, I didn't mind him as a cop who ends up an actual patrol cop, patrol officer Seegers, who befriends these two guys and helps them out. But overall, there's a few moments there's really nothing super as a comedy. There really aren't that many jokes that are really, really funny. And I think that's why it's a pretty mediocre film. The reason why I liked it, why I could watch it, and I really like it, I mean, it was there for me. But the reason why I could watch it and I wasn't bored when I was watching the film was because of the two leads. And there was a few humorous moments here and there, but there's really, mainly from Keegan-Michael Key as this character named Poopa. I've laughed one time when Damon Wayans, when Jake Johnson shows up and he's got a ghost outfit on. I'm trying to think of costumes that the two can wear for a costume party, for a college reunion party, and he shows up dressed as a ghost, with a sheet on his, on his body. And Damon Wayans, because he shows up trying to scare him, and Damon Wayans just punches him in the face. That I cracked up at that, but That's the one bit of humor that I can honestly really remember, because except for some stuff that was going on when Patrol Officer Seegers goes in and thinks that the two are actual cops and they're going to go in and stop some break-in, and there's some moments in that scene that I thought were kind of funny. But other than that, I didn't laugh very much. But the thing is, I liked it more than something like Ride Along because it had characters I actually liked and cared about. That's the big difference. And Ride Along had a decent villain performance by Lawrence Fishburne, but it had nothing else. This has the two leads, which I like, and I was curious and I wanted to see how the story was going to play out. But yeah, it could have used a little bit more action. It could have done a little bit more with the action. There's a few moments that I thought were somewhat, exciting to watch, but nothing really memorable. Same goes for the comedy. So that's why it's very so-so film, because you have a good cast and a likable characters with good chemistry, and then you just have a script that is just full of cliches and really doesn't do much different. So I can see why a lot of critics didn't care for it, and I can see why people would consider it one of the worst films they've seen this year. But honestly, I've seen much worse than Let's Be Cops. It was just a movie that was there. It was okay. It had its moments. I like the two leads, and it's really that's the no spoiler review, and I really don't. I mean, it's a movie. This might be one of my shortest reviews I've ever done, because it's just a film where these two guys. I'm gonna go into spoilers now. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do this more for you guys. Actually, warn you guys when I'm gonna go into spoilers. So that's not much spoilers at all, really, except for a few. Like the surprise that Andy Garcia is a bad guy. It's not really that surprising. But anyway, I went to major spoilers here, where the whole plot is, of course, Let's Be Cops. These two guys, Jake Johnson and Damon Wayans Jr., they're friends, and they made this pact with themselves that if they hadn't made it in LA yet, and when they turned 30, that they would move back home to Columbus, Ohio. And the time is coming where it's, they're 30 and nothing's really happening. And Damon Wayans Jr. is a video game designer, and Jake Johnson was a quarterback who got hurt, and now he's trying to pick up the pieces of his life and trying to figure out if he can do anything other than be an athlete. And so they get invited to this party. College party is a costume party, but it's not really. It's not the costume party they thought it was, because Jake Johnson was they're going to dress up as ghosts, but Damon Wayans Jr. is like, no. And he decides, okay, that's something in my teeth here, but he's like, okay, let's do it. So we're with cops. Let's take those cop uniforms, because Damon Wayans took these cop uniforms. He was going to use for his presentation at his video game, the place where he works as a video game designer. And because he helped create this game called Patrolman, which was about real life. It was a cop game. Like, what if you were a cop, like on the beat, like a real life experience, what it's like to play a video game. When you're the lead, you play as a cop, and his peers didn't agree with him. But it was stupid, so they decided to do something even dumber, which was firefighters versus zombies. And so he's frustrated with that, of course, but he's one of those characters who doesn't really have a lot of inner will or strength, and so he has to build that over the course of the film. When he finally does prove them wrong and tells them off and lets them know about his idea and why it's a good one and so forth. I mean, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the story points in this you've seen done time and time and time again, and pretty much done better. But there's nothing. It's harmless. That's how I feel about the film. It's a harmless movie. It's nothing I can really yell and scream about. It's just it's a film that it's entertaining for the time being, and that's it. But anyway, going back to a little bit more of the plot, so they decide to go to the costume party with the cop uniforms that Damon Wayans Jr. was going to use for his presentation. And of course, it's not the right costume party. It's one of those Batman Returns, put the masquerade parties, masquerade ball. But after they leave the party, they're still dressed as cops. They realize that people think they really are cops, and so they decide that, okay, let's be cops. And it was a little bit fun, and that was a way to help Damon Wayans' character, Jr.'s character, be able to have a little bit more self-esteem and actually, try to actually ask out the girl Josie, who he actually has a crush on. So then as the film goes along, Jake Johnson takes this too far, buys a actual police car off of eBay, creates a fake police car, and gets trains to be a cop from YouTube videos, and pulls his friend Damon Wayans Jr. in along with him. And so, of course, the drama is, when are they going to expose as real cops and so forth? And then they get involved in real cop stuff, which, of course, what happens is they end up getting involved with the Albanian mob and with Masi Kasek, who's the leader of it. And he also is the one that's abusing Josie, whom Damon Wayans Jr. loves, but, he doesn't want to get involved with this guy because he's a psychopath and he's dangerous. They decide to go on a patrol call with Rob Riggle. Rob Riggle shows up. He's a cop. He's an actual cop. And since Jake Johnson put like stripes on his shoulder, he thinks he's a sergeant. So he lets them go along with him on to try to stop these robbers that went in and broke in a store. They have some fat Asian guy running around naked, which reminded me of the fat guy in Ride Along, which really wasn't funny in that film, and it wasn't funny here. Then they decide that since their lives are in danger, that Masi Kasek wants them dead. Jake Johnson decides he's going to take things into his own hands. But then Damon Wayans Jr. is like, we need to stop being cops because it's a felony. They're going to quit, but then Rob Riggle recognizes them, and then Jake Johnson basically convinces his friend to let him rent out some equipment so they can try to spy on Masi Kasek and get enough to nail him. So they do a surveillance thing where you have Nastasia Leggero is playing this slutty woman pretty much, which is really nothing of a role. And it's not really funny either. And then they end up seeing that this guy, there's this load of crates that are being delivered. And so they decide to figure out what's in those crates. And in doing so, they try to interrogate, that was kind of funny, how they try to interrogate Keegan-Michael Key's character, Pupo, by just like just doing waterboarding the complete wrong way, and then eventually they think he can't speak English, and eventually he just says, "Stop it! Stop it! Stop! You don't even know what you're doing! Like, stop! You can speak English?" It's like, yes. You had to ask me. You didn't ask me. So I thought it was pretty funny. Keegan-Michael Key was the funniest part of the movie, really. And then what happens is they decide, okay, we need to figure out what's on those crates. So Josie comes along and uses her makeup effects specialties to make Damon Wayans Jr. look like Keegan-Michael Key's character. He goes into the party, infiltrates the party. He gets high on meth, which is okay. And then, gets a little bit of fight, knocks some dude out. They find out what's in the crates. It's a bunch of guns. They also find a bunch of SWAT stuff, and they find this tunnel underneath the club where Masi Kasek runs, which I actually like that. I thought that was unique, the underground tunnel thing. I like that aspect of the plot. They also find out that the guy they're gonna give the information to, that they figured out, who they think is a good guy, of course, who is actually the random guy that they took a picture of when they were doing surveillance. They find out that guy is actually a DA. So now they're in trouble because the DA guy knows who they are. They're going to go after them. And there's a decent little bit of a tense scene where Jake Johnson gets chased by a couple, a bunch of bad guys trying to kill him, and shoots him with a shotgun, sends him out the window, but he's wearing his bulletproof vest. So there's some good editing in that sequence. And I did like the soundtrack. There's a lot of good songs that they used for the soundtrack. I really like their use of the funeral song at the end, which is a song I've always liked. This song, the funeral, which was in 127 hours. Then anyway, so excuse me. So Jake Johnson's trying to get away from these people are trying to kill him, and all the while Damon Wayans Jr. is trying to prove to his employers that his idea is good. And then of course the cops then other people start coming after him, and so pretty much happens. Jake Johnson gets kidnapped, and Damon Wayans Jr. tries to go after him, and what happens is then a little bit of a twist, Andy Garcia gets killed by Masi Kasek because Jake Johnson is telling him that he's gonna kill him and whatever, and da 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 da. So he kills the bad guy. So he kills the guy who's, pretty much the main bad guy, but now it's Cossack who's the main bad guy. And Jake Johnson gets saved by his friend. They meet up with Rob Riggle, try to get his help. He ends up telling them to get out of here because he knows they're fake cops, they're not real. But they eventually decide that they're going to help him out anyway because he's by himself. And so you get a really underwhelming shootout at the end, and the bad guy dies, and you have the song The Funeral at the end, which represents them giving up being cops. Jake Johnson ends up actually going to police academy and graduates at the end of the film, actually becomes a real cop, because it was something that he was really good at, other than football. And Damon Wayans Jr. Gets his game, and it's really popular and really big, and Jake Johnson meets up with him in his police car at a Comic-Con or video game convention at the end of the film. They get in the car and they ride off, and Poopa's there with them. And that's it. It's really nothing really super memorable. It's a movie that is just, it's a time waster at best, but it really could have benefited from a little bit more, a lot more, really. I mean, like I said, it's just there because I didn't hate the film. There's nothing about this movie where I'm like, oh, Let's Be Cops sucked. It was just a movie that I liked the two leads, and I wanted to see where the story went, so at least it kept me interested because of that, and had some good supporting cast, and good chemistry between the two leads and so forth. There's some funny moments here and there, but not a lot. And the action is really nothing to write home about, so it's just a film that I really don't have any desire to see again, but it's not a movie that I hated. It's not even a movie that I liked either. It was so mediocre, entertaining at points, and movie. It was one of those films that didn't like it, didn't hate it. It was just Let's Be Cops is just one of those so films. But anyway, I really don't know what to say about Let's Be Cops except for being out of 5 stars. Like I said, so film, so it gets 3. 3 stars for me is the equivalent of a so meh whatever. It's just there. It's there. It's average. It's an average movie. That's why I say when I give someone a 3.5-star rating, it's an above average film. This is just an average movie. 2 stars means poor. It's not really a really poor film. It's just average. It's an average action comedy with a key emphasis on comedy, but most of the time the jokes really don't. I don't even know if there's even jokes. It's just these two guys, having fun together, which I can watch because I like the two. I like Jake Johnson and Damon Wayans Jr. But anyway, I really don't know what to say about Let's Be Cops except thanks for watching my review, and I will see you guys later. See ya.